My name is Billy Roberts, and I was the art director and co-producer on the project. More recently, I've moved into the role of CCO, and I'm responsible for operations and also production.
I'm Michael P. I was also co-producer and narrative lead until recently. I've stepped up to creative director.
My name is Timmy. I'm the Unreal Engine lead developer, and I just push buttons all day. Been working in Unreal Engine for about 11 years, starting with the UDK back in 2012, and I've been working in Ganymede for a year and 9 months or so now, I think. Yeah.
My name is Jimmy. I'm a producer for the Medikey Studios, but I've also worked on Ganymede as a concept artist. And I've been with Medikey for just under 2 years now. So yeah, almost. I was one of the first people to join, which is exciting.
Your founding father, Jimmy.
That's right.
That's it. Yeah, it's been a good journey though.
I'm James. I've recently stepped in and taken up the mantle of art director for New Ganymede, but I'm a concept artist by trade background. So yeah, that's me.
My name's Niwa. I'm from New Zealand, and I've mostly been working as a concept artist on New Ganymede, mostly ranging from buildings and props and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from Melbourne as well. Just in case, if we're pointing out locations. You know.
Oh, then I'm from Wellington.
Yeah.
I'm Lulu, and I'm the content and community manager for New Ganymede, and I live here in Melbourne.
Hi, my name is Marie, and I'm working as the social media marketing specialist for New Ganymede. And I'm living here in Melbourne as well.
My name is Nick Sachin. I'm the 3D lead for the New Ganymede art team. Basically just overview, model, and texture.
Hi, my name's Tyler. Also one of the 3D artists for New Ganymede. That's based in Canada. My role is 3D artist, so create 3D assets and textures based on various concept art done by the amazing concept artist team. And set dress the buildings we have made in Unreal. So I pretty much visualize our concept artist 2D work in a 3D space.
I just started laughing. Busy, very busy. It's anything from planning out months, weeks in advance on certain things and sprints and timelines and trying to line up the team to keep the efficiency flowing. It's also things like upskilling and management, making sure that we're following best practices within the industry and processes around that to maintain quality and expectation of the product.
Yeah, a typical day is a lot of floating around, jumping around to the different departments, basically making sure that the creative direction is not being lost in the spaces between like different stages and different departments.
It's mostly just bugs. It's mostly just funny bugs that are ridiculous, like importing something, and it's like this giant version of like one of our characters that's like stomping through the city, and just kind of moments like that usually. Funny bugs, funny interactions with coworkers. It's kind of it's easier to tell with like images and stuff. I like making little memes and posting them when we have a giant silly bug like that. But I like the dance bug. That was weird. That was recent. I do have I just recorded with my phone, so it's crappy quality, but I don't know. I think this is more like a general kind of programmer thing that programmers are, already aware of. But when you think of programming, you might not think of it. And that I spend quite a bit of time and energy, like especially mental energy, like architecting systems, and then implementing them is like, because if you don't architect right away and you just kind of like throw code together, then you end up refactoring like 50 times when you want to change things or add new features. So it's much better to just like architect it and like draw it out or think about it in your head, at least. So programming is not I guess it's the engineering part of the software engineering kind of field is just like designing these systems and then implementing them is separate but related. So obviously programmers know that, but maybe some people that haven't done a lot of programming wouldn't realize that it's a lot of just designing.
Well, you're currently looking at one. There's about 50 other frames down the bottom of the museum there, and they all have your face on it.
Oh no.
Somewhere.
I didn't know New Ganymede was a horror game.
We definitely got to throw in like a bunch of Easter eggs for sure for players to find.
Oh, I've got one. Well, I was whipping up some designs for the player housing. I made a few graffiti tags of some of our names and snuck them in there on some of the designs. You'll have to check them out to see.
It's the new game. Okay, we've got to start doing more of that.
Yeah, I used to do that. Yeah, when we first started figuring out what New Ganymede would look like, graffiti and stuff would have like my partner's name in it. That was from like freelance jobs when I would always try and find a way to sneak that name in. I don't think any of the concepts were approved.
That's cool. Yeah,
and they're too old, but some of them are in there.
I've got to sneak my kids' names in there somehow.
Yeah.
Is there an Easter egg in this one?
I'll never tell.
So Marie and I were playing around in Umbra against revenants and getting some footage, and Marie dies pretty early in the first wave of attacks. It wasn't until we slowed down the footage that we realised that it was me that killed Marie because friendly fire was turned on. So it had nothing to do with Marie's skills.
For the general person interested in gaming, typically they look at gaming like, oh, it's a fun thing. Right? So I want to work on games because I like playing games. I think I could speak to that a little bit, that angle. I did the same thing when I was younger, and then I started building games for myself. And there was a sort of a time where you start to realize that these things are not just fun. These things are very stressful. These things are very data-driven, very thought out stuff. So it's not, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to make a game. Maybe 10% of the time we're looking at artwork and saying, hey, that's great, let's try this. But the other 90% of the time, we are delegating, organizing, setting processes and structures. So it's different to the perception from the outside world.
You're right. It has this kind of preconception, right, of being something that's kind of easy and fun, and you just kind of get in there and like throw some stuff at the wall, and it's not always like that. I mean, sometimes it is, right, but not always. A fun fact about narrative design and games writing, right, is a lot of people think that it's very similar to screenwriting, right? The interesting distinction there is in screenwriting, right, you're writing from like A to B to C to D. If a game's narrative is good and works and it's compelling, there will be a kind of reciprocity. The player is kind of participating in that, right? They're almost a collaborator, a contributor to what this story is and how it's going to fold out. And the really challenging thing then for narrative design is that you need to be able to anticipate every potential choice that a player will make and make sure that the story for one player as opposed to another player is going to be equally compelling, and making sure that every element in the game is working to tell a compelling story, regardless of which direction the player decides to move in, what choices they decide to make, how they decide to sort of pace their own journey. That's the main difference between games writing and any other kind of writing. And it has some really kind of interesting, unique challenges there.
I think production in games is like baking a cake. And the style or the taste of the cake is the initial direction, the GDD. So let's just use New Ganymede as an example and say that it's a banana cake. Not only do we need to know the ingredients to build the cake, we also have to grow the bananas from scratch. We can't just go to the store, grab the bananas, and make the banana cake. We have to figure out everything from the ground up. And We have to grow each aspect of that taste to get the right flavor.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Interesting metaphor.
This one kind of involves Tyler and I I don't know if you want to say it, Tyler, or if you want me to say it.
I can say it.
Sure.
Like one time Nick had to send me a large file to download for work, and because we live so close to each other, it was faster for him to get the file onto a hard drive or onto a USB and run it over to my house than it would have been for me to download it.
We live like a minute apart, so it's not like I was running for 10 minutes.
Even though we get to play around in New Ganymede and create fun content, everything that we do is data driven. We make decisions on our content and strategy based on the information that we've collected and analysed. So we're not purely creating memes all the time. It's there's a strategy behind what we're doing. Yeah.
So basically what we do is every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, every month, we download a report from all of the social media platforms we have activated, where we look at a lot of different data points, graphs, numbers, comparisons, like between benchmark, between how we performed at the very beginning, how we performed versus the previous period. And based on that, we try to find learnings, insights on how, not just how the posts are performing, like just in the terms of, okay, it worked because it has a lot of impression, but more of how did the community like the post, where they're super happy to see the behind the scene, maybe they wanted to see more gameplay content. So it's not just about making the numbers look good on the table, but more about providing to everyone that is following us what they want to see as well. And to do that, we have to look at the data on this very, very boring table. I think with products like a car or a beauty product, it's yes, it's based on the brand, but it's more a value of did it work, yes or no. For a game, because it's entertainment, it's the same thing with movie and TV show and stuff. It's you don't know until you play, and it's not just oh yes it works, so I can sell my game to you and that's it. I have to sell the experience before you can actually experience it, and I think it's a very, very, very complicated task compared to a physical product like a house, a car, anything like you know how it works, just you know, and you want that particular brand. For a game, it's very, very difficult.
Making the game fun, making the game like we have to consider like lag and things like that. We have to consider that, which is why we went to client authoritative, because it's a better player experience if you're very far away from the server. It's just trying to get the best player experience in a way that's possible and a way that complies with the vision, without giving into things that aren't possible on hardware or possible with our team. Is like struggle, but also the enjoyment, because I think we're getting close to the vision. In our particular game, kind of one of the unique aspects is that the combination of mechanics that we're kind of going for, which a lot of times aren't super common. Like I think there's like a famous saying or something like to make a pie from scratch or whatever, you'd have to first like recreate the universe or something. So like I think that the fact that we're taking like a specific set of mechanics from other games and kind of combining them in ways that are make a novel thing is something that not a lot of other games have done. Like just for example, like our combat, we have some like abilities that you can trigger, which is kind of like a feature of the traditional like MMOs like WoW or whatever. We also have this like action-oriented combat, which is not something that like WoW does at all. So yeah, this has been done before, but it's just like the full set of mechanics that we're pulling from different genres, different other games in the genre, but also different like complete other genres. I think that kind of come together in this, in my opinion, like unique kind of package, which kind of sets it apart, I think. it's always a struggle trying to marry anything together, like from like visual design things that you guys are doing in the visual side and mechanic wise and the programming side and the game design side. I think it's always a struggle to be like, does this fit? Like, do these things work together, or do they just combining them make everything worse? But I think that we're getting to a stage where things are quite. I don't want to use a a big word, but it's kind of like a synergy of different things that kind of work together rather than fighting. That I think that we're getting closer to for sure. Just feeling it when playing.
Jimmy, I want you to talk about the augurs and the augurium.
Yeah, the narrative that you created around it was amazing, and I think the nature, them being connected to nature, really stood out to me, and it made me think of natural materials, especially the market area here, the like bazaars in like the Middle East and Turkey, like how they have that set up, and it also, I don't know, I think I either watched Star Wars or something that came out. Yeah, the cantina. Yeah, that I
I'm
was
seeing
looking
the
at
Star
images
Wars
of that.
fighter for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
through the process of this, I had to. I didn't have to. I wanted to create a bunch of props to fill the shelves like merchants would sell. It's all looking at Star Wars props and how simple they were. And back in the originals, they were just like handmade props from anything, buckets, spray painted, and simple forms with some breakup. Really inspired me to just smash it. I think there's like 25 unique items in there, and then duplicated and manipulated in a way, and then painted over that. But yeah, it all really spoke to me. And then doing the proper buildings as well, that was a lot of fun, and a lot of time went into those and making sure that design spoke and were unique for that area.
Yeah, 100%. It's like a design hack in terms of thinking as well.
Short answer is I don't. You don't. That's not the way to approach narrative. Narrative isn't like, it's not like a tarp that you drape over a game, right? You don't design a gameplay experience and then make a narrative and just, like I say, just kind of like drape it over the top, be like, there you go. There's a narrative. Your narrative is part of the foundation, right? It's some of those first bricks that you bake, right? And gameplay experience, player engagement, all these things that you're sort of alluding to are built on top of it, but they need to sort of interweave throughout each other. What I'm most proud of in the game's narrative is that it is invisible in a lot of cases, right? We have a lot of restrictions in the type of storytelling that we're able to do because we don't have a budget for big kind of cinematics, voice acting and stuff like that. So what we have to do to tell the story is a lot of environmental and diegetic storytelling. It's making sure that as the player moves through a space, they intuit, right, what that space is about, what's happened here, what the stakes are, what are the things that they should care about, what are the things that they should be concerned about. When they do kind of go and talk to characters, that what the characters are talking about, what their motivations are, is consistent with the things that the player is sort of seeing around them, right? Making sure that everything is cohesive and immersive is the greatest challenge in narrative design.
What I'm most proud of from like a narrative perspective, it is a taste thing. They say the interest of gaming moves at a snail's pace and progresses naturally through iterative design and narrative design. You'll see this back in Star Wars, where they had a certain narrative that clued into human nature and human emotion. I think what we've been able to do with New Ganymede is create a story that has that fresh taste, but it's not so far removed from likeness that exists in the industry, whether it's film or gaming. So my proudest thing is that we were able to create that altered reality that's relatable.
Yeah, something that's fresh and compelling and distinct from a lot of the things that are standing next to it, but something that is still, like you say, it's grounded, it's relatable, it's recognizable. You can't challenge anyone or excite anyone or get anyone to sort of think about the stuff that you want them to be thinking about if the place that you start them in is completely alien, right? You need to start somewhere relatable, somewhere recognizable, and the departures from that, the things that are a little bit alien, a little bit foreign, are the things that kind of stand out as compelling.
If you lean 10% left, you have someone say, "What the F is that?" You move 10% to the right, and people go, "Whoa, that's so cool."
I do have a bit of imposter syndrome. Obviously, I think a lot of programmers do. We're in two states. We're either in like, oh, I'm all powerful, I can do anything, and then we're like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like programmers have two states. I think a lot of programmers will relate to that. I think I was pretty impressed with myself, I guess, if I can say that I was able to develop basically like an in-game, like a runtime, I guess like a level editor. I can call it the new Ganymede editor. I think I did that in like 2 weeks. So I was pretty happy with the progress on that. I'd love to I can't wait to get back to working on that. It's kind of like a very challenging kind of a thing. It's kind of like a challenge for programmers and the scripting system that I want to get back to writing the interpreter for that. Yeah, I wasn't convinced that I could do that at first, and then I got into it, and I think it's working better than I thought. So yeah, I was kind of happy with the progress on that. And just like getting the game, I guess, multiplayer. I think we did that in like, I don't know. I mean, the whole game we create up until the first trailer we did in eight weeks and 4 days, which is I think quite good. I think other people have told me that that's quite a good timeline. So it's mostly, yeah, mostly just doing things quickly that take traditionally take a little more time. I mean, we did work like crazy getting that done. But yeah, just kind of doing things that I hadn't done before. I've done multiplayer before, but not going from a new project and just hammering up multiplayer and stuff. And then I had never done any. I did a little bit, but not to this level of like in-game like runtime level editing and stuff like that, and serializing the data to files so you could save your levels and loading them, deserializing them, and stuff like that. Yeah, I guess I was pretty happy with my progress on that kind of stuff.
I have in mind a recording, I think it was from Niwa, and he's drawing the Turco Plaza, I think. And I wanted to use it to showcase this place on the map, and I ended up just watching the recording and not doing the video for the social media at all. And I was just like, how did it use that brush in that form and that shape and make a cloud? And the brush was like square. I didn't understand. So yeah, that was even like in accelerated mode, like my ×2, ×3. I was just, what? How does he know where to put stuff so it looks good? This is basically what I thought.
I would say the Aether Core as well. I really like the concept art of, is it like an office or like a...
The firewall headquarters?
Yeah, that's it. I'm really keen to see what that looks like in game. I'm really excited for like the Aether Core as a whole, but yeah, I think that would be really cool.
The Aether Core, honestly, was a really fun thing to model. The shape of the exterior was very organic and mechanical at the same time. So it's a nice challenge to work with, to model something like that.
I think I gotta say some of the Umbriel stuff. Just the whole kind of post-apocalyptic feel of it being run down and overrun by all the monsters that are kicking around over there. Just the storytelling in there was a blast to work through.
I think there are certain cases where the literally only way to see if it works is to implement it and try it, and then just refine it, iterate on it. Obviously, you can think like, oh well, certain features are like, I don't know, ketchup and ice cream or something, like they would be terrible. I mean, there's people that like that. I knew a kid in elementary school who liked that, but most people are probably not going to like that. And it's the same with features, but there are some where you're like, oh, that might work. Let's try it, and then you try it, and you're like, oh, this is great, or oh no, scrap this. This is awful. So I think there's just some things you literally just have to. And it sounds wasteful that you're going to build this feature and you don't end up using it, but I think it's just something you have to do. You have to iterate to get the best kind of product and result as possible, I think, in some cases.
New Ganymede isn't a sort of linear like progression curve. It's not like you go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 to level 4 and things get harder and harder and harder. It's also not like Dark Souls where you get like an inverse progression curve. It's more a player guided learning curve here. One thing that was really important to me when we first started designing the gameplay was that we had a low skill floor but a high skill ceiling, right? And what that means is you can get in there and not know very much, and within your first 5 minutes of playing the game be like, all right, I get it, I can do this, I can fight, I can be competent, I can kind of get my way through it, right? The difference between being able to play adequately and scrape in and being able to like really, really optimize, there's so many like different tools, different mechanics. Everything in our gameplay is very much about like movement and positioning and stuff like that. Easy to pick up, but slow to master. You can see that there is that kind of skill ceiling before you, and you do kind of feel like you want to reach for it.
If you're bad, run around, figure it out. You haven't played very many games before. There's like a minimum standard of requirements to be able to understand how to play the game at the start. Built in preemptively to the loop and the first quest, and where you go from there. It should be pretty obvious, and the skill ceiling is the cool part. That's where you get to develop your abilities.
Yeah. Most of the stuff that you would need to hit that skill ceiling is kind of in there from the get-go, right? You're seeing like JRPGs, right? Like every 10 minutes they'll introduce a new mechanic and you'll go through another like 20-minute tutorial or something like that to do it. One of the most interesting things in kind of the most compelling indie games, right, particularly like roguelike games, in my opinion, is they do just kind of drop you into it, right? And they're like, here's your bag of tricks, go and figure it out. If you just button mash, then you'll do all right, yeah, but you've got so much more here to play around with. Every time I do a play session, I'll find like new sort of combinations of mechanics or like new ways to sort of approach a combat scenario that I hadn't thought of before, hadn't occurred to me before, and certainly weren't intended to be used in tandem to a particular effect. And I'm really excited to see how players basically break the game, to be honest.
Putting the player at the center of our strategy is what we do, especially for social media, for the game as well, but also in the way we communicate with them. So this is the only thing I wanted to say. That's great if it's in it. Like when you have, it's the same for entertainment. You have a movie, you create a trailer, and so they have a glimpse of what they are going to see. The experience is not the same, but it's kind of similar. For games, I think it's very different because majority of the fun coming from the game is not just by watching content or listening to content, it's also your input on the content. And this is something we cannot provide while we are still working on it and while we are just talking about it on social media platforms. So I guess because it's very complicated to do that, to be able to to give that impression of this is going to be great, here's why, we have to come up with different strategy, like what's making the game different, like how we can provide more value to you as like a follower or someone who just learn about us. How can we provide something to you that is as interesting as playing the game, because that one part is not available yet. So we have to come up with behind the scene, like this event on tips, on how to do some stuff, like everything we can share, and that will be helpful to you as a potential player, but maybe as just someone in the industry, just maybe another indie dev who is like, oh, I didn't know we could do that. Like just providing something else, because unlike AAA studio, we cannot just rely on our brand awareness because we don't have any right now.
Really powerful tool for like differentiating different factions or zones or things like that is coming up with that set of IRL references that's kind of like forms the baseline that you jump off from. So like an example would be like for one of our art jams, we designed spaceships, but we were just designing staplers really. You know, stuff like that where you take the mundane and you tweak it, or I think that's the funnest part of our job, and also like a really powerful creative tool to like sort of wipe off the blank canvas in a way and give you something to start from. We'll get together and I'll come up with a topic of something that so far it's been 2D artists, but I'd like to run one with 3D artists as well.
A lot of the times so the concept team will do either a key image or a breakout or a bunch of concepts on one area, and then they'll pass it on to us along with whatever. Sometimes some of them will use blockouts to draw over and stuff like that, so we'll get some of that mesh info there, and then it's just a matter of trying to take whatever we're seeing and then just really building it out and going back and forth between concept art and then building on it and then getting it in game and seeing what we're missing and then building on it again. And it's kind of this trial and error back and forth kind of quality pass of just building on it until we can get it as close to that concept art as possible.
We also created a design guide of what the do's and don'ts are when creating stuff in Ganymede. That combined with the feedback passes entail that we all stay on path while creating, so we're all in the same vision. Just like how much to bevel buildings compared to props, so everything looks the right scale. Like texel density, sizing, like what to use. So like buildings, when we use a seamless texture or use a trim on a building, it like all looks uniform. You think of any, Nick?
Yeah, and a lot of them too are just like we're trying to be a stylized kind of graphical, playful game. So a lot of those assets are how do we make this stylized and playful. So some stuff might be, oversized, where it just looks fun, and I know that a lot of that comes from, you can see that in other games as well, but we just try to follow that style guide and really implement it on everything we're working, and then once everything comes together and our building is plopped in the engine and all the set dressing is done and all the lighting is there, you can sit back and just admire.
Yeah, so just like regularly checking in with the production team, the art team, making sure we're completely across like all the updates so we can share behind the scenes and development news with our community, and just making sure that we're staying in touch and up to date with what's happening so we can plan ahead with our content and what we want to reveal.
It's still work in progress, but I guess that's makes it fun. Just asking everyone to participate a bit in communicating to the whole team what they're working on, the behind the scene footage recording every week. It's a good opportunity for us, not just to be posting about that, but also to be in the loop. And even if that content doesn't end up on social media, we can just us as just colleague or just potential players just watch it and be like, oh wow, I didn't know he could do that or she could do that, and just reach out and be like, that's super great stuff you made this week. Maybe we won't post it, but that's nice. That's super nice.
We sort of shaped the visual identity, I mean, certainly in pre-pro, but like moving forward as well, whenever we're approaching like a new character, a new location, a new anything, right? It always starts with Billy and I kind of sitting down together. I'll write a little bit, you'll sketch a little bit, we'll come and have a conversation.
What's the question again? I started thinking about that time where we did that. I was like, oh, yeah. Without the mortar, the bricks are nothing. So I need the narrative to construct the visual representation of the narrative. So they have to work in tandem. And we go through that in a very concise, precise way of operating. We cross compare the narrative and the language sets that we've discovered. And we ask ourselves very specific questions like, are we feeling the right emotion when we look at this? Is it selling the right thing? If not, how do we make it sell it? So after that initial period, we are working through it in a way that's more problem solving, sort of taking constant steps back and assessing it from both angles and making sure we have a middle ground to stand on. So it's not just overly, wow, that looks crazy cool, right? We want to have that narrative be deep and not be shallow, hidden behind beauty, but hidden within how it feels as a whole in one single frame. Oh, did we even go there?
It is challenging.
Everyone needs to be looking at the same page every day. And if you have some of the team looking at that page for 20 minutes, getting bored, watching some League of Legends while they're sketching or while they're designing, you end up with League of Legends. Your entire team needs to fall in love with the narrative. And it's our duty to inspire that process to happen. And if they're not in love with it, they can't understand the depth of the narrative. If they don't understand the depth of the narrative, it's very difficult to visually represent that consistently day to day to day for 2 years. That is the struggle that you have. You also have sometimes more specific scenarios. It could be a language limitation or a style limitation. So you have the perception of style coming from a 2D artist and then going into the hands of a 3D artist. And they're unable to perceive stylistic decision making from a 2D artist. So what grounds all of that together and how we go about that is using design Bibles and parameters to work within. It's basically a 40-page document that has do's and don'ts and rule sets applied, and also narrative injection in each set of zones that we're working in. And that gives us the ability to stay consistent.
So from a programming perspective, like from my perspective, like I'm sure everyone knows that we've already showed off the editor and things like that. So we're going for a pretty diverse. I'm really excited to start working on this after launch. Pretty diverse set of like user-generated content tools and things like that will allow players to really get in there and be creative. And I want to make it like as detailed as I can, like as powerful as I can with like scripting and like level design and stuff like that. But I think a lot of the player agency will be more like Michael can speak to this, but like on the narrative side, I think we plan to have like a quest system that allows for some player decision making, as well as like the selection of the type of weapons that you use in the game, which I guess I'm implementing the programming on that, although I didn't do the design on the mechanics or whatever. But yeah, a lot of it's like narrative, a lot of it's like on how you play the game with like selections of weapons and stuff like that, and eventually post launch, like I said, the user generated content tools that I'm excited to start working on again will allow people to hopefully get creative and some agency and be able to see their own creations inside of the game. I think that'll be pretty exciting. I always loved modding tools growing up, so that's why I like that kind of stuff.
I would say I really like doing mechanical stuff like vehicles or like buildings or little props. So doing stuff like that, I just wanted to build my portfolio and stuff I found fun to work on. So that's just how I got into doing that type of stuff. Over like I do like texturing and stuff, but like just modeling mechanical stuff like that.
Yeah, I've always kind of been. I don't even know where it started, but I've always kind of been into like designing and creative. Like it used to start with like video editing and Photoshop stuff, and then it went into some basic 3D stuff with 3ds Max, and then I transitioned into Cinema 4D for like close to 10 years, and I was just learning on YouTube, and then finally figured, you know what, I'm doing this in my spare time, and I love it, so I might as well take it professionally. So I had done the modeling course, and just trial and error on everything for me. I had done a lot, and I always found myself coming back to modeling and just creating, and then further on into modeling, I figured out, okay, I like the hard surface stuff, and I like more complicated, the better seems to be where I gravitate towards. So I used to do hard surface vehicles, helicopters, spaceships as a lot of my portfolio.
We'll get together and I'll come up with a topic of something that so far it's been 2D artists, but I'd like to run one with 3D artists as well. Maybe they can build some of the stuff that the 2D team has come up with. But I'll set them something that they'll have to do, something that they'll have to design or draw within a certain time limit. And usually I'll apply a certain set of constraints on them, like you can only use this shape, or you have to do this in 10 minutes, try to get in 20 minutes. It's a way to sort of do something really quickly and then stop and assess how you're approaching design, or like hopefully lets you learn something about how you think and how you design. And doing it in a team setting is a really good way to like share notes with people about how you think and how other people think. It's kind of like a learning intense, half hour where we get to smash heads together and learn from each other and teach each other. And I also can't stress enough the fact that like it's more so about the ideas than anything else. And I'm a firm believer that everyone in the team has something to teach and everyone has something to learn. So, whether you've had lots of experience doing art or not is almost irrelevant, because it's about showing how you think, like sort of underlying design thinking fundamentals. So, for example, we'll task the team with looking at a weapon from a game that we really like and then redrawing it from the ground up. So not sort of drawing over one for one, but sort of copying what they did or making a slight variant on it. And then when you stop and sort of assess that process about the decisions you made along the way and listen to other people explain their thought process. There's kind of like an emergent truth that comes out about what the original design was, what the intent was, and why it worked. So, for example, we might see a certain consistent shape come up, or a certain consistent shape relationship come up that is really sort of fundamentally powerful aspect of that design that we wouldn't have necessarily uncovered if we hadn't have sort of jammed on it. So it's one thing to look at reference and be inspired, and then it's another thing, and I think this is where ARM jams are really useful tools, is putting the design through its paces, and it lets you discover more about something than you would have otherwise if you were just straight up looking at reference. Debunking that myth that creativity is somehow an innate gift, and actually sort of showing the back of house that it's a process and anyone can actually do it, and it's about finding those dials that you can tweak at the start that sort of give you some guide rails to start making something. Like, it's not, I'm just as terrified of a blank canvas as you are. I need that stuff to make cool things happen.
So I am aware of accessibility, best practices and things like that, and I'd really like to, start bringing some of those practices, because there's books and stuff about it, into the design for things like UI and stuff like that. And I haven't really had a chance yet to look into a lot of the practices and things like that and all of the options. It can be something. I know that it can be simple things like remapping controls, which of course will be a thing as we get farther along into the final UI, and colors for folks that are colorblind and other things, and high visibility stuff on the UI, and not just the UI but the game itself, things like that. So that's accessibility for people, but also accessibility in hardware. So I want to have a pretty diverse, powerful scaling options, graphical scaling options in the game. No, this isn't implemented yet, but it will be coming with the new UI to allow basically people with lower end hardware to be able to run the game with an acceptable frame rate. We're looking into obviously DLSS and AI upscaling and things like that to allow lower end hardware to have a good experience. And so most of the accessibility is basically from folks with some accessibility, and also for hardware accessibility. So that was kind of the two things that I'm considering. And a lot of it's not implemented yet, but it's coming, just because we're doing so many things up to public launch. But I'm aware of it, and I'm going to start implementing more accessibility kind of features, or more accessibility options in the game, for sure. Yeah, it's on my radar big time.
I mean, you're the Discord queen, right? Queen of Discord, that's right.
My statue says King or Queen of Discord.
That's right. Yeah, you have an award saying King or Queen of Discord, don't you?
Yeah.
Yes. This is your bread and butter.
Yeah, I guess we've got strict rules in place, but we've always been pretty easygoing and lighthearted in our approach to I guess communicating with our community, and that's kind of fostered a pretty good community. We sort of muck around a bit. We do have a lot of fun with it, and I think that really helps.
I don't know how exactly. We just managed to draw to us only nice person. The community so far is just so nice, so great, so supportive. Everyone has been saying only nice things. It's very different from what you can see for other games, especially with the number of followers we have. Sometimes it's a bit of pressure to make sure that they are satisfied with what we provide, and so far it's just been awesome. Like everyone is just super nice. It's literally a pleasure to be in the Discord because it's just good vibe every day. And I know it can be stressful for people making the game, and we're like, yes, we have a pre-alpha demo, so it's literally the beginning. The date is vague, and sometimes stuff happens, but everyone is so nice, and we can get away with a lot of things. And I think it's definitely the way we talk to them, and how we are being honest and transparent, and we don't try to, I don't know, and like, we don't take ourselves too seriously. I think it also helps to realize that that's not just another game studio, like a basic game studio. It's just a random bunch of people that just are working together, and it works.
Maya is like known as the industry standard, and it costs like thousands a year to like just have the license. But like we use Blender here, and it's just so easy to use. There's so many tutorials online that you can find, like Blender Guru and other people, of just because it's free. There's just so much more content for it, and like the add-ons with it, like you can. I was native to Maya, but I like Blender more now. Like with the add-ons and learning everything, it's just I don't know. I don't think I could separate it from it. Like it's just better, and it's free, which also helps.
I agree with that. Yeah,
Same with Unreal Engine. Like yeah, you can definitely get your feet wet in gaming and making video game stuff and 3D modeling without having to like put in a bunch of money. Just a little bit of time sink to like learn, put in effort.
And it's also kind of keeping current, trying to figure out what the new thing is, because when something new comes around, everybody's going to be trying to expand into it. So if you're learning it, there's a good chance too that you can get in there. Just I know there's like random little talks that people will do on various websites. Nothing I can think off the top of my head. I keep wanting to say CG Trader, but that's
I think you can find some discussions on like ArtStation. There's even like job listings on there. If you follow the right groups on Twitter, you can find if you see the new stuff before like it's like finalized. That you see people testing ideas, which is always nice to get inspiration from.
You can always try to keep seeing like a little bit of like, if you can find behind the scenes tidbits of like new and upcoming games, you can see kind of like their method of developing stuff. Yeah, it's an exciting industry. It's always growing and it's always changing, but you just try to try your best to keep up with it, I guess.
Yeah. As long as it's something you love, you'll be fine.
Yeah. It's easy to stay up all night at your computer and modeling and making something when you enjoy doing it.
The mountains, because I get a crazy lot of inspiration from going into nature and looking at weird rock formations that I'm like, I like those three rocks and how they sit next to each other. I'm going to take that and make a design around it.
Oh yeah.
We love rocks, don't we, James?
Yeah, we love rocks. Yeah. Oh, anyway, my partner, I'm probably infuriate her, but every time we go for hikes, I'm like, to try and limit the amount of times I stop just to gawk at a cool rock, or like, maybe the light's doing something in a certain moment, and I'll just be like, oh, look at that. She'll be like, oh god, James is nerding out again. That's part of the joy of it. You notice the small things. When it launches, having seen it come together from such an early stage, it's not something I've had a huge amount of experience with. So probably like the most rewarding thing is to be able to walk around and see the stuff that you've made or had part in, or see stuff that other people have made. Super inspirational, sort of knowing all the work that went into it, for sure.
I love Sega games. I love the aesthetic, bright colors. That's why that's what got me onto New Ganymede. before we had anything, was some of the concept art, I think, done by Billy. And it was like these bright colors, and it's like, oh, that reminds me of PSO. I want to join these in on this and help this get made. I feel like Sega games always had that bright, high contrast aesthetic that I really love, and these beach scenes, and I mean, you can see it in some of the levels that I've made for New Ganymede. But I do level design, for the interview. I do level design a little bit on the side when they let me. I'm primarily the programmer. I made a glider once. I'm not a modeler or a texturer by any stretch, but I did make one of the gliders. Little plug there. But I like design as well. It's kind of therapeutic for me. But yeah, obviously I'm the lead programmer, so I don't have a lot of time to do all that stuff. But yeah, working with you guys, I like a lot, and it's because it is kind of lonely being a solo dev. Like, it's great, you have all the control or whatever, but it's kind of lonely, and it's just nice to have a team, to be on a team. And this is like the biggest team that I've worked on. Even though we're still a small team, it's still the biggest team that I've worked on so far. And I'm really loving the collaboration, the collaborative environment. I really enjoy.
Gonna have to say, just get some practice in some industry software. So you got Maya, you got Blender, you got Substance Painter. Find what you like. There's a lot of little niches in this kind of field where you could be a texture artist, you could be animator, you could be modeler,
or a lighting artist.
There's so many different little jobs, but find what you like and then really focus in on that, because the more you focus on one area, the better chance you'll get into that area. Because sometimes if you do too general, it's just hard to find a specific thing, or like if you're spreading yourself so thin, because there's so many different areas in this game design in 3D that I would just say focus in on one thing and really just practice that.
So when I was a young warthog, I was in and out of hospital all the time. I had a blood disorder when I was a young child, right? My escape was a lot of reading, a lot of fantasy, right? And then a lot of like classic, specifically NES, SNES, and Nintendo 64, right? The local hospital where I grew up had this absolutely incredible children's ward that was outfitted actually by Starlight Australia, right? Absolutely fantastic foundation. So one of the fondest memories of my childhood are actually sitting in bed in the hospital with like a bunch of other kids, like playing Mario Kart and stuff like that together. So that was when I fell in love with gaming. And then we get to sort of the late 90s, early 2000s, when in the gaming industry, I think it was Morrowind, right? It was Knights of the Old Republic. It was like Neverwinter Nights, Baldur's Gate 2. A lot of those like late 90s, early 2000s fantasy RPGs was when it all just kind of like clicked for me. Morrowind came with, what do they call it? The Elder Scrolls Creation Kit, I think. They basically had this SDK, right? And then it was the Quake 3 engine. I was doing a lot of mods for Quake 3 and for a little game called Jedi Academy. One of the best Star Wars games ever made. I was making a lot of maps for that. There were actually a lot of clans, right? A lot of like PvP clans that had their own branding and wanted their own like maps that represented like their own little base, right? So, you'd go and spend a couple of weeks building a map or something for some of these guys, and they might give you like $50 or something, which again, when you're like 13, 14 years old, like that's great. That feels really good.
I used to get sent to my grandparents in school holidays, even when I was at primary school, very young. And I stumbled upon a Sega when I was about maybe seven years old. And this is in the country in New Zealand, so there's nothing to do unless you want to run through the bush and get lost for like a day, right? So I found the Sega at my grandparents' place. I plugged it in, and
it's like Smeagol finding a ring.
Yeah, I was like,
My
what?
precious.
What? Yeah, it was like it got like that. Grandma had to rip it out of my arms. But what was loaded in it was Alex the Kid, and I pretty much sat down for the entire 2 weeks trying to complete the game. That was my first obsession, and then it moved into things like Halo 1, Half-Life. Then I got more interested into RTS games, so I played the initial StarCraft. What I used to do with my brother every holiday was we would download the latest engine builder and we would start designing games and building games together. And the ambition was over the period of 2 weeks, we try to build a game top to bottom. So we would have to sit down and do all the designs, we'd have to do all the sketching, the mechanics, and then we'd have to use the engine and learn the language that was being used, and try to figure out how to build this game. And there were some pretty stupid games that got built through my childhood. I'll tell you that
So
right now.
you like independently invented game jams, right?
Yeah, with us too, yeah. So
That's awesome.
we both leant into the artist side of things. We enjoyed bringing narratives to life, constructing narratives. Specialized, both of us, on the art side of things. So that's what stimulated my journey. And it basically just led into more serious things happening. So through high school, taking art and graphic design very serious, doing all of the art courses and all of the graphic courses, and excelling at that. And trying to find client work. When I remember when I was like 15, 16, I wasn't even like legally allowed to be paid. And I was getting work through indie games at that point. And that basically just never stopped.
Obviously, like I was a Sega kid growing up. I played a lot of Sega games, like in console, and you can't do a lot of modding on. You can't do any modding then. Well, there was like Halo Forge or whatever. But back in like the Dreamcast days when I was young, there was not much modding. So yeah, I played a lot of games that really shaped my opinions and like my tastes as a gamer. But obviously, I grew up and I wanted to kind of create similar type of games. As far as development is concerned, I played a lot of Elder Scrolls games like Morrowind when I was a kid, and yeah, great modding tools, very similar to the modding tools that are still in Elder Scrolls games. It's the same engine basically. I mean, it was called NetImmerse at first, and then it was called Gamebryo, and it was called Creation or something. Yeah, a lot of the Elder Scrolls games with their modding tools really influenced me a lot, and they had their own scripting system. And then I get into Flash, and I'd be writing little mini games in Flash with ActionScript, and yeah, just quite a few games kind of had an influence on me, both creatively and kind of professionally, I guess. Like as a programmer, I started with these little proprietary scripting languages, like I can't even remember what the scripting language in the Elder Scrolls games was, but that, and kind of just moved in onto Unreal, and I did have Unreal 2, and it did have modding tools, but I didn't use them a ton when I was a kid. I really only got serious about Unreal back in 2012 with the UDK, because you could actually like make your own complete games rather than mods with the UDK's release. I had messed around with other engines as well. It was a really old engine called 3D Rad that I used a little bit. There wasn't a lot of options back then. Yeah, I got into Construct, which is like a 2D engine for a while. But UDK really made me say, I can make the game of my dreams, with Unreal. It was available, like Unreal Engine was available to like big companies prior to that, like Unreal Engine 3 and 3.5, but then they released the UDK and it was just available to anybody, and then they released Unreal Engine 4, and it was just such a better experience. You didn't have to use this horrible UI thing called Scaleform that you had to use with UDK, yeah, just Unreal Engine UDK and Unreal Engine 4 just really was a game changer, and I just kept using it like every day, and I got to the point where I said, well, this is actually like I can be a professional at this. I'm good enough at this that I can make my own, kind of like my dream game, and also help other people. I did freelance for a little while, help other people with their projects because I mean, I've been using it for a long time. Just comes with experience, I guess. That you just get to a point where you're so familiar with something that you can pretty much do whatever you want with it.
Boy, honestly, it's as long as I can remember, I've been playing video games. I think I got for Christmas, my brothers and I got a PS1 with, I think, the first Gran Turismo and Spyro the Dragon, and the rest is history. Ever since then, it's just been getting the newest and the best and just trying to play everything.
Yeah, I'd say what sparked my interest was definitely Halo Reach on the 360. That was really when I got into gaming more, and over time I was able to expand my library of games to PC gaming, and that's just thought how sick it would be to be a part of the process of creating games like this. So when it came to finishing high school and what I wanted to do after, I saw there was a course for 3D modeling and game design at a college in my city, so I thought definitely time to take the leap and go with that course.
When I was a really little kid, we had Sega at home, and I remember like playing Alex the Kid a lot, especially with my siblings. It seemed to be the only time that the siblings could sort of play together and not be fighting. As we got a bit older, my twin sister and I became obsessed with PlayStation, and we would take turns playing through games like Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, and yeah, I really loved getting immersed in the narrative and the epic soundtracks that came with those games. Gaming became the creative fuel for like art and music growing up.
I think it started a little bit the same way. Like the only moment where my sister and I were calm and like not making a lot of noise was when we were playing. But I just want to add that we were not playing, the both of us. I pretending to give her a controller, but it was not plugged in. So I was like, yes, you're playing with me, but she was not, because I didn't want to share. So I'm sorry if you're listening to this. So yeah, it was very fun because then she was quiet. So I mean, I won everything. So yeah, it started, I don't know, and someday my father went back from a garage sale with an N64 and a lot of games in it. So I was like, let's go, why not? And it kind of never stopped, except when I made the awful decision to start League of Legends, when it was very time consuming. I spent a lot of money on a allegedly free-to-play game, and it was not very great for mental health and stuff, because the community is nice, but I think when you play, it's just you enter a different mindset. So I had to stop for a while. And how did I join? I was working in advertising, so I was selling cars and beauty products and stuff like that. And COVID hit, and I had the realization like, I don't want to be selling stuff that don't have a positive impact on people. Of course, cars and beauty products have, but to a point that sometimes you're just selling and overselling and it's not necessary. While games and entertainment in general, I like, yes, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to work on something that I can convince people to play, because that's great for them, and especially when the lockdowns and the pandemic situation started, everyone just started to play a lot again. So this was the moment where it was a good time to market games and to do games and play games with each other. And it's just the usual COVID mental breakdown a lot of people had. And I just had mine. I was like, let's try to break in, and I am.
For me, it was that golden era of RPGs, right? Late 90s, early 2000s, particularly stuff like Morrowind, stuff like Knights of the Old Republic, right? Was what kind of connected the dots for me between my love for writing and my love for games and game design, right? Was suddenly it was like, they need writers. This is serious. This isn't just purely kind of level design and a couple of characters. It was those early BioWare stuff in particular was like, wow, there's not only some really compelling stuff that you can do with video games as a medium in terms of telling stories, but there's some stuff that you can do that you cannot do anywhere else and in any other medium. Having the player actually being a collaborator, right, in the story being a reciprocation between, you know, the game's designers, the game's developments, and then the player and the player decisions, right? And being able to anticipate the whole breadth of those player decisions and making sure that whatever journey they take, and the variations in the journey for something like a BioWare game, there's like literally millions of different ways like a player journey can shape out. And the challenge for a writer to be able to consider all of those, right? And walk every single one of those paths and make sure that every single player has as compelling an experience as possible. That was just the most exciting thing in the world to me. It was what I was trying to explore when I was, you know, making mods in Morrowind. That's why I started to like lean more on that side rather than just kind of, you know, designing maps or whatever in Quake 3. Was because it had that sort of open-ended storytelling kind of opportunity there.
I fell in love with certain aspects of creating games, whether it be the narrative, bringing that narrative to life, or just visual storytelling. So that is what made me want to pursue the career. It's because I want to visually tell a story. That's what I wanted to do.
Was there like a watershed moment for you playing a particular game where you were suddenly like, oh wow, this is what I need to do?
Half-Life 1, Half-Life 2, like those were pivotal moments where I was just so obsessed with the visual storytelling, and how, when you look back on it now, how limited the technology was and what they were doing to get away with it. It's just absolutely incredible. And it's still, I mean, it doesn't hold up today, but it holds up pretty well, and it still sells that narrative. So yeah, I just got so immersed in that story and how they were selling it and how it made me feel. I played the game Half-Life 2 when I was like 9 years old. And I remember I couldn't sleep for 2 days. Yeah, I was 9 years old. I couldn't sleep for 2 days because I went through that part where you're fighting like the face.
Yeah.
Guy, what are they? I can't remember what they're called. I literally shat myself. Like, it was so scary. I was like terrified, but I loved it. So,
oh goodness!
It took me like 6 months to get past that level. You know, I was too scared. But that was the pivotal moment. So probably when I was like 9 or 10.
Everything that we've been talking about so far, even when you were asking me like, what's your favorite thing in the narrative, I almost gave you like a non-answer where I was like, I like that that it's invisible, right? We've been, you know, very, very kind of like vague and surface level here. So maybe we should try and give something like really granular, really, really specific. Do you have like a favorite mesh? What's your favorite mesh?
I've got a no. I think my favorite thing to show when we release New Ganymede to the public was show where we're at with it. Coming months is showing everyone what a small team that's super passionate can put together. That's what I'm excited to show. The reality of the situation is that we don't have endless amounts of money. We don't have endless amounts of staff. We have a very small staff member count working on this game, and it's just insane what we've been able to do. If you told any other indie company what we've been able to do, they'll be like, what? How? Why? How'd you do that? Why'd you do it that way? Like, they would want to know that stuff, because I don't think what we've done should even be feasible or possible, at least to the scale and the quality of which we've done it in. So That's what I'm excited about.
I'm going to go with something more granular and more discreet here. There's a moment in our little opening quest where Brigitte tells you to jump off the ether core, right? And you may or may not know that you have a glider at this point. Hopefully you can work it out. But she directs you to jump off the ether core. And what I'm most excited about is people's reaction the first time that they jump off the ether core, they open their glider, they see the city in front of them, they see the outskirts behind, you know, hopefully the sun's just kind of setting behind the hills, you're getting that golden hour. Those first moments, right, where the veil kind of falls, right, and players will be able to see the vision, see what we've been doing, what we've been working towards, why we've been working towards it. I hope I get to see some of those reactions or hear some of those reactions. I'm really, really excited for that.
A huge one for me is Lord of the Rings. I watched it the first time when I was 2 years old. My family was big Lord of the Rings lovers, and that is just like ingrained, especially being from New Zealand as well, and that a lot of the landscapes I grew up around is actually where it was filmed. That's just like ingrained in me.
Well, Lord of the Rings and Star Wars are the obvious sci-fi and fantasy refs that you just carry with you since childhood, and they bleed into your designs without you knowing how, but they do. But in terms of games, probably like growing up, one of the ones that had the most influence on me was so for its world and narrative, the Thief games. Still one of the coolest narratives that I've experienced in a game to date. In terms of like world and world building and immersion, Morrowind for sure. And then in terms of like art style and or stuff that I really enjoy more recently, there's ones like Cyberpunk 2077, very cool world, very immersive world. Other visually stunning games like Ori and the Blind Forest, which is more of an indie, that was absolutely gorgeous. And also in terms of like just the world and also the art style, Overwatch for sure. I love any sort of character-based games, and just the lore and the cinematics team for that game really knocked it out of the park. I love that world a lot, even though I don't play Overwatch as much these days, but
yeah, I think game-wise, Fallout 3 was one of the biggest games I fell in love with early. Yeah, I think that world, the atmosphere that they, that generation of hardware limitations that they had, the engine that they used, it was incredible. I still come back to it and play it. I think other games that inspired my art style and what I like to look at is like Brink. I think that was Arcane Studios. I don't know why I was obsessed with that whole look, and I was really sad that it wasn't as popular as I thought it would be. And then again, they really dirty bomb, and then they sadly closed those servers down and stuff. But I just love that art style. That it was kind of like Overwatch, super chunky. Everything kind of had a stylized look to it, especially the characters when they went on to do Dishonored. And I think Borderlands, the 2 and 3, just fun. They're just, they were having a lot of fun with the design, the palette. I love those. But for movies, it's been The Matrix. Blurred out. I just have The Matrix Ultimate Collection just on my desk at all times. That franchise is beloved by me. Huge fan. I think it kind of bled into everything after it came out. It was just so new and interesting at the time. It's such a great mind-bending movie when you first watch it, and then as you keep watching it, you find all the small details just really prominent, and how they transfer that over the first 3 films, and not so much the 4th film. The 4th one exists, so that's good.
I do want to say Halo Reach, but I'd say that's probably the answer, but I would say probably the most time I put in the game is Counter-Strike. Oh, maybe not. It'd probably be League of Legends, but I'd say I like Counter-Strike, but definitely Halo. Yeah, Halo Reach.
I've had so many years of playing RuneScape, and just my brother and I shared an account, and we would literally stay up all night, and we would make like a bed beside the computer and just take like 45-minute shifts of just like mining ores, and then you would just like wake them up, be like, it's your turn to go mine. Ridiculous hours in the morning, like trying not to get caught by my parents, and just like on the family computer.
I have this weird stuff about time travel, TV show, series, film. I love that. And the first time I played The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, just hours of not even playing the game, just thinking about it. I was like, how is it possible? How can someone make a game like that? I was just trying to figure out how it worked and how to do stuff, because at that time, and I'm not that old, but at that time we didn't have any like online solution or stuff like that. We didn't know how to solve issues when we had one. So I was just spending hours awake at night, eyes open, and be like, this game is so crazy, but how can I finish it? I can't.
It's probably Final Fantasy VIII. I just remember, I think I was like 15 or something. Just the intro to that game was really epic. It had this soundtrack that was, I don't know, built a lot of suspense, and it was also really beautiful. I think might have been the intro to like my JRPG sort of fanaticism. But yeah, just think the story was really great, and
no, but I think you say something that's interesting. Is it's not just about how you play; it's the story, it's the vibe, how it makes you feel.
Yeah, definitely.
Even after, even when you're not playing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the music was a huge part of that, because I remember going to a concert years after that and still having that same feeling. I saw one in 2003. It was by an Australian-based group, and that was I think that was where I actually got to meet Nobu Uematsu.
I did, like I said, I did freelance for a little while, and then I was basically at a point where I said, well, I've got enough saved up, and my skills are good enough now where I can make my own game. And my favorite game of all time is an old game for the Dreamcast called Skies of Arcadia. So I took about 2 years I said I'm going to take like a couple of years and just really just hammer on this and see how far I can get. And I was pretty impressed with it. I got quite a bit of attention on it, which was exciting, and I talked to Epic, and I was talking to publishers and stuff like that. It's on hold at the moment. I wouldn't say on hold. It's obviously I don't have time to work on it a ton, but the technology's still there, and I'm still I'm still current, because it's my job to stay current with Unreal Engine. So it's that's what I was doing. Was full time on my Solitaire project, kind of making the game of my dreams, and I like to make little most developers, most game developers, especially like in the indie world, will often like have like 50 projects at once going, and I do have a couple other smaller side projects that I like. I think I showed you guys my little block game that I started on my holiday break last year. But yeah, that's what I was doing at the time.
Quite early on in Morrowind, when you're exiting Satanin, which is like the starting town that you first come into, you go in a certain direction, right? You're walking out into the wilderness for the first time, right? The horizon sort of stretching before you. You're ready to embark on this epic adventure. And then you hear this scream, right? And you're like, where the heck is that coming from? What is that? You look up and you see this wizard plummeting from from the sky, landing on the ground right in front of you, dead. And I go over to this wizard's corpse. I inspect the corpse. He's got a journal, right? I open up the journal. I see that it's got like several pages, and I'm like, all right, like, good for you, or I'm sorry that happened. But I ain't reading that. And then I see he's got some scrolls, some magic scrolls. I'm like, all right, yeah, okay, cool. I consume one of these magic scrolls, and I realize that it's ostensibly a scroll of flying, or this wizard's attempt at making a scroll of flying, right? I jump, and I realize that the effect of this scroll is it increases your jump ability by like 1,000%. So you just immediately like up in the clouds, right? You're getting like 3 FPS, right? Because it's 2002 and you're playing on a crappy Dell desktop that your father does his accounts on, and you fall back down, you die because you weren't paying attention to the diegetic storytelling here, to the environmental narrative. So I didn't read this guy's journal and realized that he'd been trying to make this flying scroll, and it obviously hadn't worked out for him. I didn't take the hint, and I suffered the same fate as this poor wizard. So in a future playthrough, I made sure that I didn't kind of trigger this event. I didn't encounter this guy until I was a much higher level, and until I'd worked out how to cast Featherfall. And then I went to this guy. I knew where the event was going to be triggered. I came down the road. I heard the scream. I saw him plummeting down, and I'd managed to scope him with a Featherfall spell, like just before he hit the ground, and he just floats down and he lands, right? And you go and talk to him. He turns to you and he says, "I don't want to talk about it." And he just like walks off, right? And the fact that Bethesda, these mad lads, they kind of program that for this like 1 in a million shot that some player might occur to them to come and Featherfall this guy, right? And they'd kind of coded an interaction and a conclusion, for that scenario to make sure that it was still immersive, right? That it felt kind of satisfying for the player that was like cheeky enough to, go to the effort of doing that. I was like, again, this is narrative design. This is what it's about. This is what writing for video games is all about.
Mine is I got addicted to StarCraft 2 solos, and I took like 3 months off school. It wasn't probably that long. It was probably like 2 months off school. I got sick. I downloaded the game when I was sick. I was like really unwell. I had glandular fever, which normally lasts around 6 months. So I ended up playing StarCraft 2 like the entire time. And it got bad, like really bad. I got really good, but everything else was really bad. So that's just an embarrassing story, because while I was sick, I did nothing else but play this game. Literally nothing.
Your embarrassing
Absolutely
story
obsessed.
is that you went try-hard mode for 2 months?
Yeah.
Mate, that's rookie numbers. That is absolute rookie numbers. Are you kidding me?
No, it was bad, Michael. It was bad. It was... Yeah.
Did you have a bedpan?
I do. I have a commercial. That's what I went to school for. Went to the United States, and it was a long time ago though. And yeah, I have a commercial pilot's license with a multi-engine and an IFR rating, which makes so you can fly in the clouds or whatever. But yeah, that's what I went to school for, which isn't programming. It's not game development, but it's still a science degree, I guess. But I probably got my license or wanted to go into aviation because of playing some games like that when I was a kid, Skies of Arcadia. Always loved the nautical things and aviation kind of thing. My dad had a private pilot's license before I was born, so I've been around it a little bit before. And as far as it's a technical discipline like aviation, like it's I didn't do an engineering program or anything like that, but there's a little bit of engineering in it, and that that kind of informed my kind of. I've always been interested in mechanics and machines and code and things like that. And airplanes are complicated systems. They're a lot of moving parts. So just got me thinking about like complicated systems, I guess. And also I can critique any if we design things that are similar to airplanes, I can I can offer maybe an interesting perspective.
There's so much. Everything is just. I just want to show everybody everything.
I really love Umbriel, so like yeah, I feel like everything there. Like I really love the cargo bay area, like with the crane,
Yeah,
and I just love how that area turned out.
that's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, like yeah, I know I just love looking at this area. Very nice.
I think I can't just wait. Like, we keep going back to it, but I think just the whole Umbriel environment is just everything just turned out so nice with it. I just love the whole
That's
thing of it,
exactly
and
what
I
I was
just
thinking.
kind of can't wait to just like play around and run through the buildings at the same time of kind of being chased by hordes and and
Yeah.
just living
No.
through it and just figuring out,
Yeah. And the whole
where
eerie feel to it just seems fun to be and explore and just see where you can go. Just explore the areas, find the buildings.
you can get on top of some stuff. It'll be a good time.
Hmm.
Yeah, you'll get definitely a lot of time to be able to explore, and you'll know maybe there's some areas of the map that work better for your playstyle, and you'll know, oh, I work best if I go up on the hill, or I need to stay down on the main area, so I can kite them around or something. But it'll definitely be a fun learning experience to play through here.
Yep.
Might find out by playing the game. Coming soon.
Keep your finger on the pulse for New Ganymede and keep seeing what's gonna come out.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what people think of it.
Yeah.
I know we put a lot of time and effort and passion into it, so hopefully that comes across and people really enjoy the game.
I think a big thing for me is like regards to New Ganymede. I'm a big fan of MMOs and MMOARPGs and all that. Played heaps of them, but I've never ever come across one that's in that stylized style that I like. We have great stylized games like Overwatch, but there isn't many MMOs that have a crazy style like this. That's just something I'm super excited for.
Yeah, I'm excited to experience the lore and narrative that we've created. I've been reading it, been ingraining it into my designs and stuff, but it's going to be another thing to immerse myself playing it with other people just running around. I'm excited for people to experience it as well. It's definitely unique and vast. So narrative, I think for me, I think that's a big push. Yeah, narrative, art style. Well, we've got so much cool stuff. I don't think I can say much about it. So. Yeah, I think those two factors, face value, I think that's what people see, and I think we have it nailed for New Ganymede. You can judge the book by its cover in this case, I think.
Yeah, I think the art style is reflective of like kind of game we're trying to make. So it's like accessible and fun and playful, but also like back to the narrative and with the art, we really love fleshing it out. So we want it to be fun and playful, but also immersive and have those nuggets of detail for the players that like to really dig down and enjoy that kind of stuff.
I think another thing is also just the ambition. I mean, with our team size and what we've achieved.
Yeah, it's quite the undertaking. New IP, and it's a sci-fi. That's probably the most complex, hardest two you could put together. But I think we're doing an amazing job. Not biased about that at all.
We're all artists who need and want that very high standard. We want to be working on something of that very high standard because it inspires us to make cool shit, right? What would we be doing if we were doing a half-assed job? Like, that's not why we're creatives. Like, we're creatives because we want to make something as cool as possible.
Say I'm a person that likes Mustangs, like the car, the model, right? There's a reason why I like it. It's loud, it's big, it's heavy, it's fast. That's why I like it. There's a reason why people like Call of Duty. There's a reason why people like those genres, those games. I would like to see the games companies lean into that more, lean into the audience that is. I would like to see a few more risks being made that were happening in the early 2000s. None of this, hiding behind what works and actually exploring what isn't. That's what I'd like to see.
I think that's a good kind of criticism against like AAA is that they're playing it safe and they're trying to lean on the formulas that emerged like 15 years ago, and we're not seeing a whole lot of risk, a whole lot of innovation, right? We are seeing a lot of that from indie, right? I think what I would like to see more of is a little less formula, a little more risk, a little more innovation, right? And I'm pleased that we are seeing that in the indie sphere. And it's interesting the way that it sort of trickles up, right? That when someone does something in indie that is kind of groundbreaking, and unexpected and fresh and innovative, then suddenly you get like a lot of AAA players trying to like double down and sort of copycat that. Ultimately, I think that's a good thing.
Shout out to Frog Detective. I think I had to look it up. Worm Club, but I think it's main developed by Grace Bucksnear, who is a RMIT alumni. So yeah, definitely recommend those. I think they're pretty popular, especially the first two, but they have a cult following. Kind of solo devved at the beginning. So it's pretty inspiring stuff, that game.
There's a few solo dev ones that like I don't know about coming up, but ones that I've seen that I liked was Way to the Woods, which was like I think it was a solo dev one about like a parent and child deer or something like that. It's gorgeous. And Untitled Goose Game.
I think Cult of the Lambs was also developed. I don't know if that was in Melbourne, but definitely Australia. And with Hollow Knight. Shout out to those. Hugely popular.
Of course, Cult of the Lamb, which is the best game ever. But also, no, Untitled Goose Game is nice because recently I played the co-op mode. I didn't even know there was a co-op mode, so we were both of us just playing, and it was even funnier than just on solo. It was so great. So, yeah.
Nothing that hasn't already been said. So, like Hollow Knight, Cult of the Lambs. I guess we'll see more at PAX this year, which will be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
We've got Cold of the Lamb, obviously. That's Melbourne-based studio, Massive Monsters. That has just been an absolute huge breakout success. Hollow Knight's by a team down in Adelaide, which is absolutely fantastic. A little game called Necro Barista has been on my list since I first saw it at PAX Rising in 2019. It's basically a visual novel, right? But with just absolutely incredible cinematography, that's sort of based on the premise of this coffee shop in Melbourne that sort of sits between worlds, right? It's sort of the gateway between the land of the living, the land of the dead, and the people that work at this coffee shop are like psychopomps, right? So when someone dies, they get 24 hours to spend sort of in and around this coffee shop, preparing themselves to, let go and sort of move on to the afterlife. It's a really beautiful concept there. We've actually got something else that is just released from a Melbourne-based studio that I think we're expecting to see something of at PAX called Stray Gods. It's another really interesting concept. It's like those Telltale games, right? Narrative driven, very like choice heavy games, but a musical, and you're making choices that will change not just like the lyrics, right, but will actually change like the mood of the music, the sort of chord progressions, the theme and variations that you get through each of these numbers. It's written and directed by a guy called David Gator, who was a writer on Knights of the Old Republic. He was the lead writer on Dragon Age, from Dragon Age Origins right up to Dragon Age Inquisitions. So he's one of the most talented people ever to come out of BioWare. And the composer for it is a guy called Austin Wintory, who was the composer for Journey, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, the Banner Saga, really fantastic composer as well. The two of them have sort of teamed up and started this new studio called Summerfall Studios here in Melbourne. I would definitely recommend checking that out as well. I could go on, but I won't.
The coming months are going to be very fun, and it's super exciting.
Really excited about what we're doing over the next few months.
Bye, guys. See you later.